Hello, this is Pravin. Welcome to .NETgurukul.com for the ASP.NET Core training. Today we are in Module 1, Introduction to ASP.NET Core, Session 1. So Session 1 is all about client-server model. Okay, here are the agenda items. So in this particular session, we have to know 4 points, look, 4 things, like in terms of what is client side, what is meant by server side, and what is how do I send the request and how do I get the response, and how do I render and see what's the inspect that particular response. Okay, so let's get started. So here is a basic diagram, like how the client server model looks like. Okay, so you have the client browser, like where it can request this particular resources on the server side, where the server will take this particular request and process your response. Okay, like in terms of the IAS Express, IAS or Kestrel. Okay, on this client side, like you'll have the Chrome, okay, Edge or Firefox. Okay, so we'll try to understand this client server model in detail. So let me connect to my tab. Okay, yeah, it's got connected. So let's understand client server model in detail. Okay, I can say like this is the web client server model. So it is applicable to all your web applications. So this is the main that we have to understand that in detail. Okay, so first of all, we have to know what is client. Okay, and server. So, and we also need to know like how do I make request from your client and how do I get the response. So what is client actually? Client is a piece of software. Okay, is a piece of software that is installed on the client machine. Okay, so which has the capability to make a request to your server. So server, like in terms of the server resources, it could be anything, like in terms of your like in terms of the CSHTML or HTML or JavaScript. Okay, like the file resources can be, okay, dot .cs okay, dot html or dot cs, or it could be dot if it is like ASP.NET, like you have the dot .axpx file, right? So in terms of the whichever the file resources you have, I can request from your client, like in terms of the a piece of software. I told you like it's a piece of software that can be installed on the client machine. Like the piece of software can be any browser, like whether it could be a Edge. Okay, it could be Firefox. Okay, it could be Internet Explorer. So this is the piece of software which has the capability to make a request, okay, onto the server side. So, and this particular server side, like it is a piece of software that has been installed on the server machine. Okay, example, like in terms of the IAS. Okay, this is the IAS is the servers, is the piece of software that is installed on the server machine. Okay, so IAS Express, you have IAS Express, and you'll have Kestrel. Okay, so this is both the like in ASP.NET Core, you have to understand like ASP, it uses the IAS Express and Kestrel. Okay, in ASP.NET Core. So in ASP.NET Core application, it uses both the servers. So once you go to the demo, you'll get understand. But for now, so you understand like you have in ASP.NET Core, you'll have the combination of using the both the servers like IAS Express and Kestrel. Okay, in terms of IAS, like IAS is a GUI application, like which is like earlier it was used in the ASP.NET. Okay, in the ASP.NET they used it. Okay, so now that they are using IIS Express and Kestrel. Okay, so this is very lightweight, and unlike in your IIS, like in terms of IIS is the GUI applications, like where they used to create the virtual directories and host their applications, right? So now that there is nothing like virtual directory creations and hosting that in that particular format. Like it makes simple, like in terms of IIS Express and Kestrel combination, it's a lightweight server. Okay, it's a lightweight server. So you cannot see since it is not a GUI application, like it comes in the format like in terms of it comes in the form of exe file. Okay, so I will show you the path and exactly like in terms of this particular IIS Express and detail. So for now you understand, like in ASP.NET Core, it uses a combination of IIS Express and Kestrel. Okay, so this is the lightweight server application, like it comes in the form of exe. Okay, .exe file. And the ASP.NET Core apps, it uses both the servers. Okay, so keep that into mind. Okay, so I hope you understand like what is the client and what is a piece of software that it has, and the server, what is a piece of software it has. Okay, like in terms of this is IIS Express and Kestrel, like they are used in your .NET applications. Like if it is like PHP, so PHP web servers, like they have Apache web server. So I just wanted to give some knowledge on other platforms as well. Okay. On the PHP side, like they have the Apache web server. So on the Java, so they have Java web servers. So but our interest is on the .NET side, right? So .NET side, on the .NET ASP.NET Core, like they are going to use IIS Express and Kestrel. So we need to know that in detail. Okay, so during the demo I will let you know that combinations. Okay, so once the client and the server softwares are ready, like we need this browser, like in terms of the IE Explorer or Chrome. Okay, it has the capability to make request to this particular server resource. Okay, it makes a request to HTTP request. So I have something called as HTTP request. It can make a HTTP request. Like in terms of how do I make this particular HTTP request, like HTTP colon / server name / port number. So here is the specification how this particular request is made. Okay. So if I see that HTTP colon, like in terms of the type of protocol, like it could be a HTTP or it could be HTTPS. Server name, like in terms of the IP address or the server name. Okay, port number, it can like in terms of the HTTP, like it is like 80 port number. So if it is like HTTPS, okay. So this is for HTTP. For HTTPS, I have something called as 443 port number. So this is the default port numbers that it uses for specific HTTP types. Okay. So once the request has been given to the server, like it will process your request. Okay. So it will completely runs the server side program onto the server side, like whether it is like CSHTML, if it is there is a database functionality where it reads the data from the database. Okay. So whatever like the things like in terms of your complete request, it processes this particular request and sends back the response. Okay. So the response is given to this particular client back again. So this particular thing is nothing but your HTTP response. So the HTTP response is pure HTML or JavaScript or CSS. Okay. So this is the response that is given back to it will totally process and render this particular HTML back to this particular client machine. So now the client machine, the client software has the capability to showcase that in your web page, like in terms of the HTML, like in terms of this particular browser or the Chrome or iExplorer, it has the capability to render your HTML, like in terms of it has an interpreter, like where it can see the total HTML layout and it will give this particular web page display. Okay, so nothing but whatever this particular HTML or JavaScript or CS files will be executed by the browser. So browser has the interpreter. So understand like HTML, JavaScript or CSS is not executed on the server side. It is rather executed on the client side. So client side will have this particular interpreter. So once you go through the demo, you will get understanding much more in detail. Okay, let me connect to my Visual Studio. So here is my Visual Studio. Like I have this blank solution, okay, blank folder. So I'm just creating a new project over here. Right click and say add new project. So I have this particular template like in terms of ASP.NET Core, Web App, Browser Pages. Okay. So select this one and say next. So I'm giving this particular web application name as session 1. Okay. Uh, Client server model. Okay. Here is my location folder and say next. Okay. I'm selecting this particular framework 9.0. Select the 9.0 framework and say create. Okay. So I have this all the stuff related to client server in terms of these files. Like see if I open the properties window, I have something called as launch settings. So this is applicable with respect to your server side. So how do I process with respect to HTTP, HTTPS, like how the application has to be hosted, application hosted URL. So this is particular HTTPS, like in terms of you have both the URLs. Okay. So this is nothing but this one particular URL application hosting, like which is related to your IIS Express. Okay. One another thing is like with respect to Kestrel. I told you like in terms of this particular thing, like ASP.NET Core uses both the servers like IIS Express and Kestrel. So I will prove that. Okay. So later, like in terms of this thing, like I have also have this particular IIS Express. So when I select IIS Express over here, the profile settings with respect to IIS Express will be automatically loaded, okay, by the Visual Studio. So let me do that. Okay, before that, I'm just walk you through this all the folders. Okay, I have www root. Okay, I have too many JavaScript and CSS class file, which is related to your completely related to your sorry. So completely related to your client side. So this properties window is like folder is like with respect to your server side. This is related with respect to your client side. Okay. And you have the ASP.NET Core Razor pages. Okay, you have this particular bunch of CS.css HTML files with a shared folder. The shared folder is nothing but your just like a master pages in your ASP.NET Core. Okay, so and later like in terms of your app settings like .json is like your web.config file in ASP.NET and app.config file in your Windows application. Okay, you have your startup project. Okay, a program.cs class file. So it is telling that it is creating an instance to your create builder. Okay, web application and adding this particular to the Razor pages and build this. Okay, so you have this particular request pipeline settings. Like I have this particular routings and authorization which I doesn't need for now because I just wanted to remove this one and make sure you understand everything. Okay, so you have this particular Razor map pages. Like since we are working with the Razor, I need this one. So there are too many files. I wanted to remove all the stuff. Okay, so I need this particular server settings that I will keep it up. Like in the all this particular server side, client side I don't need. So I will select this and I will remove this. Okay. Since it is what we are new to this particular thing, we wanted to do it from the scratch, and this is the best practice. Okay, so I deleted this one. So Razor pages, like there are too many, right? Like in terms of all the stuff, like I wanted to remove all this. One file is enough for us. Okay. So we'll start from beginning. Okay. I'm just deleting this one. I just remove this one as well. Okay. We need the app settings. Okay. Program.cs class file. Okay. So for testing, let me run this. Okay. So I will select the HTTPS. So when you select the HTTPS, this will be applicable. So it runs both both the servers, like in terms of your IIS Express and as well as your Kestrel server. Okay, run this. Let's see what's there. So on the index.html, we have some error. Like let's work it out together. So open this. So it is telling that there is no model here. Just we remove that. So I just remove that. If you can see in the index.html, you have that particular page. Okay, this is nothing but your server-side program. The simple way to understand the index.html, it's a combination of Razo syntax, C sharp coding, as well as HTML and JavaScript. Okay, simple, like in terms of this is the piece of code that runs at the server side, not on the client side. So this one is just a copy paste from the server, like it will give this particular pure HTML back to your client, which is executed by the browser. Okay, so this is runs at the client side, this runs at the server side. So this is the part of the server side execution by your ASP.NET code, and this is with respect to your client side. Okay, let me save this and run this. Okay, excuse me. See here, I got loaded everything, like in terms of the, if you can see, open the launch settings here. So it using the both the US. So for initially the request is given to the 700 port number localhost. So see here 7002, and internally it calls your another port application URL localhost 5250. So here the 7002, here the 7002 internally makes calls to your 5250. So if you can see this particular console window over here, okay. So if you can see, like the initially it may request to your 7002. Okay, so that internally it will call back the Kestrel URL. Okay, so this is the application URL used by your Kestrel server. So I told you, like in terms of it uses the both the servers. Like if it internally it calls your Kestrel. Okay, Kestrel server. So I hope you understand like what this particular HTTPS application URL hosting. Okay, so how this particular, since I selected the HTTPS, like it is running both the servers. Okay, so this is the settings that is applicable for your HTTPS. So if I close this all this stuff, okay, so I'm closing this one. So when we select, I accidentally closed my Visual Studio. Let me read to open this. Sorry for that. Don't want it to delay. See here, the if I select this particular HTTP instead of HTTP, just now we have selected HTTPS, right? So now we'll select HTTP, okay? So that this particular application settings will be applied. So it runs on 505 5250. Okay, let me save this and run this. So it doesn't use us both the servers. Like for HTTP, it's like we doesn't need an extra layer of security. So directly it uses 5250. Okay. See here, I have the 5250. If you open this particular console window, it is not making the internal call to the Kestrel, like in terms of both the URLs, right? So it first started with 5052, okay? So 5052 and ran that and we got the response, okay? You can see the response over here. It got loaded. So here is your final response, okay? So I wanted to make sure you understand what we are trying to do. What is this particular server settings? Look, this is basic to things to understand, right? So I told you this is the server, like when server name that it has to be given. So since this particular client and the server is in the same machine, so I can specify this as the local host, or I can directly replace the computer name or the IP address. Okay, what I will do is I will go and find the IP address, IP config. Okay, I can use this particular IP address and use make sure it applicable runs to this particular IP address instead of just we are relocating that particular server, right? So and this particular port number also I just wanted to make sure like it can runs on other port numbers also. Instead of 50, I just gone for 51. Okay, 5250 was the earlier one, like now it's 5251. Okay, let's save this and run this. See, it locates the our resource through the IP address or the location to with respect to your. So allow this. So it is saying that it is I firewall something. Yeah, this is not secure. Like it is accessing with respect to your IP address. Okay, and with respect to the port number 5251, whatever the changes that we made it with respect to the port number changes. Okay, that is like applicable. And seems like when you create another project and another settings, like whichever the server name, you have to give it and the port number it runs, and you have to give the relevant port number, then that will be executed. So what I will do is, like, I will select IS Express, okay, and save this. So when I select IS Express and run this, that particular settings related to HTTP, like in the settings related to IS Express, will be loaded into this launch.json. So let's run this. So this 44337 is settings related to your IS Express, not with respect to your HTTP or HTTPS. See here, HTTP, HTTPS, and IS Express. Okay, see, you can see 44337. This is the SSL port that is used by your IS Express. Okay, so whichever the cell you select, either you select the HTTP, HTTPS, or IS Express, like that particular settings will be applicable based on your launch settings. Okay, I hope you understand. You have the complete knowledge on the client server side, other launch settings. Okay, now close this. Let's understand on the Razor pages. Okay, I will just open this one. See here, if you can see, like I have this particular piece of code which is at the rate page, like which saying that this is the Razor pages and this is this server side syntax. The simple way to remember, for now we have the complete course content to understand the Razor pages. For now, you understand, like when there is an at the rate symbol, okay, it runs on the server side. Okay, this is nothing but your server side, and this is like the pure HTML, and this runs with respect to your client side. Okay, I will remove this stuff. Okay, I will remove, since you doesn't know about the view data also, I will remove this. I'll prepare a simple, like in terms of simple variable, and I will append that variable in your HTML. Okay, so let's do that. Where I'm declaring a particular variable. Okay, I'm just telling server name. Okay, server time, as I just wanted to take the server time. Okay, I just giving some datetime dot now. Okay, so I will prepare a HTML, and I will run this. Okay, let's do that. Having the HTML tags over here, so I have this particular title. Okay, I'm writing a simple JavaScript. I will let me write a simple alert in the button click. Okay, within the body, I just wanted to declare a button. HTML hello from ASP.NET Core. Okay, server time. Okay, I just will give the server time with respect to the exact name. So I my basic HTML, what I'm trying to do is, like this particular piece of code, this particular HTML code, it's not going to process at the server side by your ASP.NET Core. It runs on the client side with respect to your browser, and this is with respect to your server side. So let me run this and show you that. Okay, I'm running through IS Express. Okay, so you can run any of this particular thing. Like when I click on this, like you have this particular alert message saying that this is the client server. If you wanted to see view source, so since this is executed at client side, like this pure HTML, the pure HTML is just copied by your server and given to your client application. Okay, so similarly, like if you can open with respect to HTTPS, okay, and save this, select with respect to HTTPS and run this. So this will run with respect to your both these servers. Okay, so if you can see, so both the application URL has been processing. Okay, so open this and check it out. Like you can see, so it runs on the HTTPS protocol as well. Okay, if you can see, if you have something called as developer tool to inspect. So if you can inspect this one, so if you here you can see, if you select this any of this particular control, that relevant HTML you can see, like here is a HTML content over here, all the elements. Okay, and you have something called as console. Like if you can see, it has all the warnings or errors and all the stuff in this particular console. and the sources, like where we are getting this particular CSS or HTML or JavaScript or whichever things, like it will show the sources. And then networks, if it is making any of these particular API calls. So for example, when I click this and if I'm making an API call, so that particular networks will be that particular API calls will be captured in this particular part. Okay, so for now we are not capturing any of this particular API calls. Okay, so for you understand like the basic in terms of view source. Okay, see how that particular page has been loaded, or what is the content in that particular source. Okay, so also see the inspect this particular individual, like in terms of the elements. Okay, inspect with respect to your elements, inspect with respect to your console, source, network. So something related to your performance, how much it that times you explore yourself. Okay, so understand these two things, how this particular rendering happening. Okay, view source and inspect, both the things. Okay, understand the both the things. Okay, yeah, that's the agenda for today. So what we will be learning in this particular complete course. Okay, you will be working with respect to your server side, like in terms of the Razor pages, like we'll try to know much details in terms of the Razor pages, like okay. And you'll have the middleware, like you might be working when you make the request, like in terms of the middleware, like you might be having authentication and authorization before accessing that particular URL or particular resource from the server side. We have to make sure that particular client is authenticated. Okay, if you have the secure data, so I wanted to use the authentication and authorization. Okay, so I will be using with respect to your authentication and authorization. So we'll also work with respect to the Razor pages, and we will also work with the MVC and all the stuff. Okay, so I divided this particular complete course into 4 phases. Please go to the course content. Okay, so I hope you understand. If you want me to recap everything, like see here, you know what is client and server. Okay, client is a piece of software that is being installed on the client. Okay, if you can see, I wanted to recap you everything. So client is a piece of software that runs on the client machine. Okay, the server is nothing but with respect to your piece of server that runs on the server. If you wanted to see the path of the server, like in terms of the I told you that it comes in the exe, right? So if I have this particular path. Okay, so once the particular you have installed the VS Studio, so it has this particular path. Okay, so it runs this particular path and open. You see here is your IS Express. So IS Express will internally use the Kestrel. Okay, so uses Kestrel. That's what we are doing with respect to your .NET Core. Okay, I hope you understand what is client and server. Okay, in terms of HTTP request and response, like in terms of port numbers, like in terms of default for HTTP is 80 and for HTTP is 443. Okay, and hope you understand with respect to your HTML response. Okay, so let's get started with our next session, like in terms of the next session 2, like HTML and JavaScript basics and its limitations. So let's get started with respect to the session 2. Thanks for watching.